Here I am in a kitchen, busy restaurant. It's the afternoon, hasn't quite gotten as busy as it will be, but they're getting ready, they're preparing. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some photographs of the chef when he's working and all the different kitchen help with lots of activity. One of the questions that I'm always asking myself before I start any kind of photograph, and I mentioned this earlier in our presentation, is it a time photograph or is it a focus photograph? And a time photograph is one where the activity is the primary story that I'm trying to tell. And a focus photograph is one where I'm going to use focus to create a narrative. The best example of a focus photograph is a portrait, because I use focus to focus on, for example, the subject's eyes. A kitchen, by comparison, with lots of activity, is a classic example of a shutter speed or a time-based photograph, where the thing that matters the most is all the activity. So all the choices I'm going to be making here in terms of photographing are going to be about time, showing the activity, showing how fast they work, showing them cutting, etc., etc. So let's go to work. So when I was in there today, I was doing things like focusing on just the actual dishes themselves, sometimes on the workers, sometimes the interaction between the two. And if you notice, as I'm pressed up against the wall and I'm working on the tabletop near where the chef is working, I'm doing both horizontals and verticals. And a lot of my horizontals will have the dish in the foreground and maybe the kitchen in the background. The other thing about keeping to the sides is my friendly tabletop tripod, which you'll notice I was using a lot. I was placing it on the wall, and what that enabled me to do is a couple things. One is I could shoot at a slower shutter speed, and so a lot of the pictures I'll have, for example, the food or the dish will be sharp, and the worker will be blurring around, which suggests that it's a busy place. And so that's the kind of photograph, that's the kind of narrative that I'm going to be trying to create in a place like that in the kitchen. The food is ready. Let's go do some tabletop photography to show you what I would do if I wanted to photograph these dishes for a publication, for the restaurant, or any other use. So here we are, we've got these beautiful dishes to photograph, got a great restaurant behind us, and I just have to figure out how am I going to position myself, what's my light source. I have to go through all the usual things that I'm going to do when I'm going to put together any photograph. So if you look over here, I've got this great window light coming in from the side. There's a great lace curtain, which is actually softening the light and making it diffuse coming from one side. Probably not going to keep those. Definitely going to do something with the dish in the foreground, maybe the bar and the bottles in the background. Going to also photograph from this side, probably using the screen behind, and then I'm going to photograph from this side with a restaurant interior back there. Since the lines of the bar and the lines of the curtain and the lines of the silverware are mostly verticals, I'm going to start off by looking at verticals, but I may end up doing horizontals along the way. So the first question is just how close do I get? So I'm going to get about as close as I can, so the whole bottom half of the frame is the dish and the top half of the frame is the restaurant. So the first few shots were made with a wide angle with a 24 millimeter, which makes the food very big and the environment very small. Next thing I'm going to do is step back a little bit, change my focal length. Now I'm using something like about a 40 millimeter lens to have the food in the foreground and the restaurant in the background. Trying some of those as well. So far I'm mostly doing verticals, but let me see if I can make an interesting horizontal out of this as well. And it's actually pretty simple. The main dish is going to be the right side of my frame, and then the other two dishes and the line of the bar are going to go off on the left side of my frame. And one of the things that I'm always troubled with, people say, what about the rules of photography? And so one of the rules I gave you earlier was the idea that if your subject is vertical, you should make your picture vertical. Now I've found a horizontal version, and it works just as well. So rules are basically made to be broken. Okay, so in the foreground of my photograph, I have the dish, and the background is a beautiful cut glass window, which is out of focus. And so in this case, I'm going to focus on the dish in the foreground, and the cut glass window is in the background, but it's out of focus because the dish is the primary thing, and having the background out of focus tells the viewer, look at the food first and that door, the cut glass second. So we've now changed dishes, and what caught my eye was the color of the flowers and then the color of the various beets and watermelon radishes. Is that right? Mm-hmm. So what I have here in the foreground is I have a nice detail shot of the radishes and the other bits of fruit and vegetables there in focus, and the bar and the purple flowers in the background are out of focus by quite a bit. And then it's just a question, do I do it from straight on right here? Do I move to the right? Do I move to the left? I'm going to look at all of those and then decide later which works the best. That works very well. One of the questions, and I always do this when I'm photographing, is do I focus on the first part or the second part or the third part? And so one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to take multiple versions of the same picture, close focus, give me a second, and now I'm going to move my focus point to the middle, do that version, and then I'm going to move my focus point towards the back and do that version. So in this case, I've got 3 different versions, so I think the focus point being in the back is not going to work. But let's go back and try it in the middle. Yeah, that works better, having the focus point in the middle. Cool. One of the great things about doing food photography, which is something I've only been doing for the last 2 years or so, is you get to eat the food that you see being made while you're on assignment. You get to eat it at the end, which is what I'm about to do right now. Thank you.